Welcome to the Centre for Legal Innovation's Legal Techy Tuesday series. We are very excited to have Aditya Patel from Law, Strategy and Marketing at Legality here with us today. Aditya will be demonstrating Legality's market-defining eSign and digital stamping solutions for Indian businesses that takes the paper out of paperwork. Again, welcome. Fabulous to have you here. And now over to Aditya.
Thanks, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Legality starts from the core proposition that businesses can't survive without signing documents. If you think of any commercial transaction today, whether it's a personal transaction or whether it's a transaction of a small or big business, each transaction actually starts with a signed agreement that moves and forms the foundation, the legal foundation of the transaction. Given it's a mostly legal audience, I'm sure I don't have to reiterate that. Given that our whole profession is often also based on facilitating these transactions and facilitating these signed documents. But the fundamental problem with this is that these transactions happen on paper. And paper right now, is an extremely painful process. Right, paper is time consuming, and I'm talking about paper at the level of businesses where there's up to 100 to 1,000 documents that they need to sign in a particular week itself, right? So paper is time consuming, the time taken to fill out documents, the time taken to transport them to signatories. It's expensive. The costs associated with the physical processes, printing, ink, paper, transport, all those attendant costs. It's extremely hard to track. Once you've signed a document, you need to store it somewhere safely. And then when you need to retrieve it for enforcement, it's a logistical exercise. You need a whole operations wing to actually handle physical paper. The fourth is it's prone to fraud. Especially, in a low trust economy like India, with a slow judiciary, you could say, slow judicial process. Things where parties tamper with agreements simply to prolong the legal proceeding while it's not, it doesn't happen all the time. It does happen, and it can lead to interminable delays in the enforcement process. Fourth is, of course, it leads to paper can be damaged, and there can be errors in filling up documents, which is inevitable, right? It's not intentional errors, and there of course can be damage, which is also accidental, but it's very possible given paper is a physical object. Combined with the cluttered storage of paper and the difficulty of enforcing, documents where someone says, this is not my signature, this is, they've changed the agreement since I've signed it. Overall, and when you extrapolate these problems to say 1,000 documents a week or 10,000 documents a month, it becomes a huge irritant to doing business. Now, this problem is a worldwide problem, but there are certain unique Indian problems as well, right? So, when you heard the introduction of an eSign solution, you maybe, your mind would straight away go to something like a DocuSign or an Adobe Sign, which are established global players in the field. And so you may be wondering, are we just a knockoff of DocuSign or Adobe Sign for, just selling in India? So I contend that we're not. And we're not, because there are certain unique problems of Indian contracting processes that we specifically focus to solve for. And these processes may, be applicable worldwide. They may be applicable in other common law jurisdictions as well. We're not aware of that, but right now we're focused on the contracting processes we've seen in India, which players like DocuSign and Adobe Sign don't solve for. So the first is, of course, contracting conventions that stem from the physical process. Just to give you two examples, in corporate agreements with corporate signatories, there is a requirement. It's not a legal requirement as such, but it's a requirement that has become a requirement by virtue of convention of a digital rubber stamp saying, authorized signatory or a director of this company that is accompanies the signature of an authorized signatory or director on corporate agreements. So that is a very much physical process so far that has been going on. And that is something we also had to take into account when digitizing. The second is something like signing on every page. So in India, there is a convention, and I'm not sure if it's the case everywhere else. I know it's not the case, say, in the US, but there's a convention where you need to, and for every agreement, you need to sign on every page at particular locations given on that page. It's not enough to simply sign on the signature pages. And naturally, there are exceptions and there are transactions which go through on the basis of signature pages. But as a rule, organizations and businesses are far more comfortable with signatures happening on every page. The second main requirement is, of course, you'll be familiar with the payment of stamp duty on transactions. In India, unfortunately, stamp paper journeys, as is in the status quo, are physical, where you need to physically print the stamp paper and affix it on the agreement to comply with stamp duty requirements. And the third generally is a lack of awareness and knowledge about digital signatures and e-contracts. And again, this is no one's fault. It's just the fact that this technology is new, it's nascent, and even the regulations for it, there's not much awareness about the regulations for these processes. So there's not much judicial precedent as well to, detail these processes. Even though it's completely legal, the fact that it's new means, there's less case law, there's less legal awareness, there's like less public awareness of the possibility of, that digital signatures and e-contracts hold. So legality quite simply wants to digitize all physical touch points of this execution journey. We focus solely on document execution. And our aim is simply anything you need to do with regard to execution that you used to do physically, we allow you to do digitally, right? So our basic feature set includes e-signing, where we offer a wide variety of e-sign options in compliance with the Indian Information Technology Act, but also compliant with foreign legislation surrounding e-signatures. We have things for businesses like automated and bulk signing, and we have an audit trail that is digitally signed with all documents. I'll show you this more in the demo. The second is we've developed a solution to actually digitize the physical stamping process. So while there is no direct plug-in to government stamp agencies for a digital process, both the Information Technology Act in India and the Stamp Act in India do provide for a way that digital stamp papers can also be valid. So we have, and I'll show you this in the demo, we have a process where we handle physical procurement and then digitize whatever physical procurement we do for businesses. And the third is, of course, and I'll show this to you later, is we have other ways of digitizing other aspects of this execution journey. It's not just about signatures and stamping. As I mentioned, there are things like contracting conventions and things like that need to be digitized. And the fourth, of course, is when someone wants to move to a digital solution, they don't want to, have the same process, just digital. They don't want to have the same turnaround times, the same costs. They want to see better results. They want to see a faster solution. They want to see a cheaper solution. So we have a set of automation tools that can be, that are integrated with e-signing and e-stamping that make the execution experience just a lot better than what is there in the physical process. So it's not a like for like replacement. It's actually an improvement. And that's what we strive to do. So without wasting too much time on that, I'll just thought I'd show you the product itself and then come to the rest of my presentation, so you have an idea on the context. So this is the legality dashboard. We have two primary ways that we've offered to use legality. One is through the dashboard, and the other is through an API that integrates straight into internal software journeys of businesses and enterprises. So the basic signing flow works like this. I won't, of course, go into how you do it at scale, but I'll show you the basic signing flow, which forms the core of the product. And someone who's used DocuSign or Adobe Sign, I mean, the general idea and concept is the same, with just the things you can do at each stage being different. Right. So the first step is to actually choose the document that you want signed, right? And here there are two options. One is you can directly upload a PDF. And the second is you can pre-save templates. So a business can simply pre-save the regular commonly used template and store it on Legality. And I'll show you why this is important in a bit. After choosing the document, businesses can choose to name the document in a particular way. They can choose to assign a reference number for the internal record keeping purposes. And then they can choose whether they want to affix stamp paper or not. Right. So with stamp paper, there's a way where they can order stamp paper through Legality. Legality will physically procure stamp paper for the business. Legality will then print a unique legend on the stamp paper and digitize it. So all they need to do after they order stamp paper is wait 10 days. So let's say they order 1,000 stamp papers, they wait 10 days, and in 10 days, all 1,000 are available. They simply toggle this on and simply choose stamp paper that is available that they've ordered. So in India, how it works is each state has a different stamp paper that you need to do. So depending on where the transaction is completed, you need that state's stamp paper, right? So they simply toggle and choose from the inventory, and that's the stamp paper chosen. They have another option. If they have their own stamp paper, they can upload that file as well. So once they've chosen stamp paper, they go to the next stage, which if they choose a template, is to populate the template. Right? They can do this manually. If you see, it's filling in real time. But the unique thing about this template feature that really, fits into the use case of businesses is it leads to automatic pre-filling. So they can just, with the API, hook this template up with their own, CRM, ERP systems, loan operating systems. And they can automatically populate and pre-fill templates directly from their own data repositories. The big benefit, of course, being that this eliminates manual errors when filling documents, which often have lead to re-execution of agreements where something is filled in wrongly. You need to then initiate the whole process of execution again. So once you've filled in the template, chosen the document, chosen stamp paper, the second stage is choosing who signs the document. Right. So here, you can add as many signers as possible. We have clients who are operating on, high value loan products with multiple guarantors and multiple co-borrowers, up to 15, 16 people they're having on an agreement. You can, of course, have more. We've had agreements with, say, angel funds where there are about 90 investors and there are 90 signatories on an agreement. So it's completely flexible. So what do you need to choose to, have someone sign a document? One is you need their name, and the second is you need either their email ID or their phone number. So we don't just operate on an email basis, we also operate on signing through a phone with a phone-based OTP system. Because in India, most consumer use cases where businesses are signing documents with their consumers actually happen through the phone. Most people don't have even a laptop or a desktop, and their interaction with internet-based services is through a phone. So it is very important for us to have that support for phone-based OTPs to sign. The default option is that the organization themselves is a signatory to the agreement, very useful for authorized signatories. And you can also request a signing order where an agreement goes in a certain flow for signing. In this case, I will choose to sign the agreement as well. So after finalizing parties who are going to sign, the next step is to choose the signature types. Right. So the first signature type we have here is called the Aadhaar eSign. So Aadhaar card is the Aadhaar number is a unique identity number that any resident of India is eligible for. And it's needed for a lot of services. So, there's about 95% of people have an Aadhaar card. And it's a Information Technology Act sanctioned way of electronically signing documents where you use your unique number and you authenticate it via an OTP to actually sign documents. So for this first signatory, I'll show you how the Aadhaar eSign works. And there are, built-in presumptions of validity under the Indian Evidence Act for documents signed through an Aadhaar eSign. The second is a virtual signature, which you would be familiar with if you've used DocuSign or Adobe Sign or any global player. So this is our in-house solution for that need, where there's a virtual signing pad or a virtual choosing your signature pad. The only difference being that we gate ours through an OTP. So there is an OTP gateway, which I'll show you for the second signature. So once you've selected signature types, once you've selected who's signing the document, there are a host of other options that legality allows parties to do. So as I mentioned, for example, you can have a digital authorized signatory seal or a rubber stamp for your signatory for corporate agreements. You can collect supporting documents from signatories. You can have a face capture, a photo capture, a geolocation capture for signatories. Yeah, you can have custom URLs and custom consent language that signatories need to consent to before signing documents. So there's a whole host of options that you can choose to add to the signing journey. And of course, there are other advanced options like you sending supporting attachments to signatories while signing. So once you finalize that flow, you simply click next, and here you're at the stage of finalizing the document. So this is a dummy stamp paper that we put here. We print a unique legend on it with a unique document ID, and we take this unique document ID and then digitally affix it. So this is physically printed and scanned, but we take this ID and digitally affix it to every page of the document to ensure that there is a connection between this stamp paper and this document, and to ensure that this stamp paper pertains only to this document. Now, of course, the final step, which is quite important to most signatories, is where the signatures will appear. By default, they appear at the bottom left, but with custom coordinates, it's possible to choose where you want signatures to appear. And you can universalize the positioning across the document. But of course, you can also go to specific pages and fix positions. Once you're done with this, you're ready to send. You can have a look at the invitees once more just to check if you have the right ones. And you simply hit send, and it goes to the email ID or phone number of the party. Now at this stage, just want to recap a bit. You may be thinking that it's quite, and I don't blame you for thinking that it's still quite a complicated process. From that point till this point, there are multiple configurations you need to remember. There are multiple configurations you need to actually execute. And if someone is doing 50, 60 documents a day, this can be quite painful. So keeping that in mind, we've developed a way to save configurations. So where you can save your signing journey, you simply do the process I just did, and there's a way to actually save that journey. So for certain agreements where you have the same process flow and the same configuration, you simply do it once and you save it. And the next time you need to actually execute it, you simply need to click a button, upload a document, and send it for signing. And of course, enter the signatories and send it for signing. And the other way is, of course, through an API where you can completely automate the journey without having to configure these each time. You simply do a one-time API configuration. So with that out of the way, how does it actually work? So now it's at the customer's end, right? So the first sign I had sent to my email. I haven't sent it to the phone because I can't show you the phone on a screen share, the SMS on a screen share. So they receive an email. The email, of course, can be customized as per the user's brand journey. So their company name, the company colors, the name of the person sending the document will be here. So this is, of course, a legality user who's sending out documents for signing. And they simply see the email and they click on sign. And after they click sign, they are able to view the document and see where the signature will appear. So after they view the document, they simply click on proceed. Because there was a digital rubber stamp sought, they confirm the organization name and they give consent. And the first signature was Aadhaar eSign using the ID card. They simply consent to the Aadhaar eSign and they press sign. And here in the Aadhaar eSign, they redirected to the agency that provides the Aadhaar eSign. This is the government licensed agency that is authorized to actually authenticate the Aadhaar eSign. So there's an automatic redirect to that page. They simply give consent. They enter their ID number. and send OTP. So now your Aadhaar is usually linked to a phone or email ID. And so OTP, a one-time password, is sent. The Aadhaar eSign is completed. There's a success message. And then the document goes to the second signatory. They see the other party's signature here. They see where their signature will appear. They press proceed. Now with a virtual sign, as I mentioned, it's gatewayed and authenticated by an OTP. This one-time password is designed to give the signature some sanctity and some level of authentication. So they have to enter the OTP here, and they're taken to a virtual signing pad where they can initialize the document. This is particularly suited to a phone where you have a touch screen. And so it's extremely easy on a touch screen to affix this virtual sign. They click on consent and they press sign. And so that signature is done. Now, after this document is completed and after signatures are completed, all parties receive an email saying everyone has signed the agreement, and you can find a copy of the agreement and a copy of the digitally signed audit trail in the document. So they simply download the agreement, they download the audit trail. All right, and now I'll show you how the agreement looks on a PDF reader. So I'll just share my screen again to the PDF reader. So yeah, I'm on Adobe right now. And I can see the signatures. So it does a verification check to authenticate the signatures to see whether the signature has been revoked or not. So there's another additional security layer that the technology itself provides for. Right? So the signature is valid. You can go to signature properties. You're able to see the signature certificate, signature details. Right? So this is a digital signature issued by a certifying authority. So it has additional presumptions of validity as well under the Evidence Act in India. So easier for enforcement. Now, apart from these, the document itself, there is also an audit trail. Which I'll show you now. And the audit trail essentially captures the entire signing journey from start to finish with the stamp paper, with the unique document hash that is assigned to the signed document, from the timestamp of when the invitation is created to when its different signatories have signed the invitation, to the digital signature certificate details that are extracted on the audit trail, the consents provided, the IP address. And so you have a full record of the journey, which is also digitally signed by us to give this document also the protections that a digital signature gives to a document, which is namely that if the document is tampered with, it's extremely easy to detect that it's been tampered, because the digital signature itself will disappear if even a full stop is added to this document. This document hash as well completely changes if you even make a single comma or a full stop on the document. And so if some party in court is bringing in a tampered document, it's going to be extremely easy to point out that it's actually tampered, because one, there's no digital signature appearance, and two, if they have to provide the document hash, it would be a completely different hash than the one on the document. So that in essence is the core of the product. And that's the live demo done. Would be happy to answer any questions subsequently or offline regarding this. So that in essence is the product, where we try to digitize all aspects of the execution journey, and everything from couriering your agreement to signing it to filling it up before signing. We take care of the entire journey, to even storing it in a secure cloud. right? So that's the live demo. So I'll come to the concluding part of my presentation. Is apart from this core signing journey, for businesses, it's very important to have uh, features that, as I mentioned, digitize other physical touchpoints, which the legal and compliance teams are very particular about. So I just gave you a flavor of that there, but there are some features like for authorized signatory seals, for sign verification, templating, white labeling, tracking documents, sending reminders. So um, we've had to, and it's been actually driven from the market. We've had to build these features because businesses don't see the value add of simply digitizing signatures unless they can digitize other physical aspects that they either are mandated to have by legal and compliance teams, or that they feel more comfort in having just because of established business processes. That said, there are some unique problems and opportunities in selling to legal and compliance teams. And why do I say selling to legal and compliance teams? So our market is, of course, businesses and enterprises, but often given the product is a legal tech product, the final say-so or the seal of approval needs to be from the legal team, especially given it's a product that executes legally binding documents. So the first problem, and I think this is a global problem, is that lawyers are notoriously wary of technology, to the point where they often focus on, problems that might arise with technology, but which also arise with physical processes, and, see that as a deal breaker. And, it's not really the fault of lawyers. It's just the exposure that is given to technology law and just technology generally in the public domain. The government also doesn't do a great job of, publicizing or spreading awareness on the legality of these things. The second is, of course, the lack of awareness about the legal regimes, as I said, governing these processes. And the maxim of what is unknown must necessarily be feared. It's a huge problem we face when trying to convince legal teams of getting approval for this for their organizations. Of course, a lot of this is due to the nature of being a lawyer. So it's not I'm not blaming lawyers for this. I mean, it's probably the job of a lawyer to be this doubtful of things. So I'm a former lawyer myself. So I probably adopted these same attitudes when I was practicing, and it's probably part of the job description. So, I mean, it's just a factor of the environment that we've learned to accept. But at the same time, there's an opportunity as well, because while legal teams may not often be the decision maker for adopting the technology in and of themselves, they carry immense credibility and weight within an organization. And so if you convince the legal team and you get them on board, it's extremely easy to then convince other departments and other verticals to actually adopt the solution. Because if the lawyers in the company are support or endorse your solution, it's very likely that other departments will actually listen to that department and actually adopt the solution. And at the same time, of course, a lot of use cases for us, a lot of use of legality is by legal teams within organizations who want to make their legal paperwork much easier. So, we're not going to blame the system. We're not going to blame lawyers for this part of their job. But so we need to take proactive steps to actually overcome this trust gap. How do we do this, right? So we have a core product team and sales team of former lawyers with experience at top Indian law firms. This gives teams comfort that we know what we're talking about from a legal standpoint, that we have legal experience. And it also helps because when we build the product, we're building it from the perspective of what a legal and compliance team would need from a document execution product. We've also, and I think Komal has been on a session before from Cyril Amachal Mangaldas. We've been a part of Prarambh, which is India's first legal tech incubator, run by Cyril Amachal Mangaldas, which is a top Indian law firm. So, partnering with them, working with them to identify legal loopholes, working with them to vet our legal processes, gives great comfort, not just to clients, but also to us that, we can sell a legally compliant solution to large businesses. And the fourth is something we're, of course, working on right now, and it's a work in progress, is developing a content strategy to overcome this knowledge deficit. Often with selling products and selling, especially SaaS products, it's often easy to fall into the trap of all content, outward content you push being simply to sell the product. what we at Legality want to do instead is to shift the focus, and make all our outward content focused on simply educating people on the legality, the validity, and the potential use cases of such a technology. Whether people buy it or not after reading it is, it's a secondary objective. The idea first is to facilitate this behavioral change and to ensure people are comfortable with the technology in the first place. And we believe that once that happens, we automatically stand to benefit. I won't lie. We are one of the few businesses very fortunate during the recent COVID-19 lockdown to have actually benefited financially from the lockdown. We've seen immensely increased interest from large enterprises that are undergoing digital transformations on account of disrupted physical flows. And this is evidenced where our revenue in 3 months of the lockdown was more than our entire last year's revenue. Where conversations with traditionally regulation-wary organizations like banks, where cycles take a year or almost a year to a sales cycle, where they were cut short to 6 to 8 months because banks were extremely keen on adopting these technologies. Interest from individual users who wanted to sign personal contracts, like a personal, agreement they're entering into with a family or a friend, they needed documents signed. And fifth, of course, an increased awareness among law firms themselves. We've not targeted law firms as a market, but there was an increased awareness among law firms about digital modes of execution. And in fact, an increased interest by law firms to actually use digital execution platforms to actually sign transactions. And this is actually quite path-breaking, because in India, if organizations themselves are wary of technology, law firms are probably the most wariest, the most apprehensive about using technology. So it was quite a paradigm shift there. And I just want to end with a case study on how Legality played a role in making such a form of execution more trusted in India. We played a part by being the execution platform for India's highest value transaction to be eSign, which was insolvency resolution plan documentation, which is very much judicial documentation, which is under the purview of a judicial body, where 22 banks used Legality to meet a deadline to sign a documentation for INR 1,100 crores is it's a lot of money. It's I think 110 1,000 million, a billion. I think it's $1 billion rupees or something, more than that. I'm not sure what the conversion is there, but we were able to help these banks do it in less than 8 hours. So there was a deadline of March 31st. And of course, due to the lockdown in India, it was not possible to actually physically meet and sign, or it was hard to physically send documents to each party to sign. And of course, there were parties who were foreign based as well. There were foreign banks as well. So through Legality, they could do it in under 48 hours. And doing such a transaction actually helps the wider market. It sends a signal that, this technology is trusted, this technology is reliable, and this technology is valid for even high stakes transactions. So things like this, which of course the lockdown has helped definitely make push the envelope with regard to technology adoption, and push the envelope with regard to how acceptable this technology is seen, and definitely pushes forward this industry, not just for Legality, but for other players in the market as well. So I'm done with my presentation. Thanks for your time. Feel free to ask me anything offline on LinkedIn or email. Would be happy to discuss and answer. And if you also work in this field outside India or even in India, would be happy to just connect for knowledge sharing and just generally a good conversation about it.
Thanks, Aditya, for an amazing presentation. It was really interesting to learn how Legality's platform has taken the paper out of paperwork, automating workflow solutions for Indian businesses, and how the COVID-19 lockdown has made eSign more acceptable in India. So if there aren't any questions, we will draw to a close. Please feel free to contact Aditya via LinkedIn or the Legality website, as he stated.
Sure. I'll just share it again once, so people can, if they need to, take it down. But yeah.
Thank you.
You can also go to our website and, as Christine mentioned, drop us a line there.
A huge thank you to all of you who have attended today. As you know, the Centre for Legal Innovation is very much focused on these types of webinars, this type of information sharing, collaboration and experience exchange. We are all about practical solutions. There will be many more webinars coming up in the Legal Techy Tuesday series in 2020, so don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter or Facebook for announcements. We look forward to welcoming you back to one of our events, and thank you again very much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Aditya. That was great.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.